Tétart, you are a fever. Hey, look, don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. Y'all said y'all cool with it.
And now they have their opportunity. They have their opportunity as French trans phenom Julie Tétart looks WNBA ready and is waiting for the league to call. Cheryl Reeve, where are you at? Brianna Turner, Miss I got my degree in inclusivity. Where are you at?
News, a transgender player has been dominating France's second-tier women's basketball league, and now the WNBA question is front and center. Julie Tétart averages 21 points and 20 rebounds this year, while sweeping Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Domestic Player of the Year honors after a record-breaking campaign. When asked whether she joined the WNBA if a team called, she was quoted as saying, "I won't say no." Indiana Fever, send the shirt, get it all, get everything ready, get the pen and pad ready, go on and get the contract.
Well, congratulations to the WNBA, because apparently the league may have finally discovered the one thing that is supposed to solve all of its problems. Forget a stronger marketing strategy. Forget a bigger television package. Forget investing in better arenas. The answer, according to the growing online conversation, is a 34-year-old French center named Julie Tétart, fresh off a season in France's second division, where she reportedly averaged around 21 points and 20 rebounds per game, and she has already made it clear that if a WNBA team comes calling, she is not automatically shutting that opportunity down.
I want to get to a subject that I will openly admit is going to be highly sensitive. Some people are going to try to politicize it. It's not about politics to me. It's a sports story. But I don't give a damn how you feel. I'm not running from it. And that involves the WNBA coach. Her name is Cheryl Reeve. She's a coach in the WNBA. She is the coach of the Minnesota Lynx. And during this weekend, in a game against the Indiana Fever, she was seen wearing a Trans Kid Belong t-shirt.
And after watching Cheryl Reeve turn Sophie Cunningham's comments about eligibility in women's sports into an entire courtside statement involving a shirt and a confrontation, you would think a league that talks so much about inclusion would be rushing to explore a player putting up MVP-level production overseas. So where is the call? Where is the announcement? Where is the team willing to make the move? Somebody might want to check whether those front offices are paying attention, because right now the message seems oddly selective. Inclusion becomes a huge talking point when it generates a viral controversy, but suddenly things get much quieter when that same debate could affect an actual roster.
We're trying to almost weaponize the word kid and children to, dig deep on the feelings of people instead of the facts, which are what? The science behind this, that men and women are different. And you can call yourself a woman, you can call yourself a cat, call yourself whatever you want, but the facts are what? Trans women are men. And the W in WNBA stands for women. So I just hate it when words like that are weaponized. And Sophie Cunningham made it very, very clear from day one, when, by the way, she didn't bring this up. She was asked by an ESPN reporter about this topic, and she answered. And then as the controversy brewed, she went on Twitter and said the same thing, which is, I am not trying to exclude anyone. Everybody is welcome at my table, but this is the WNBA.
At some point, the league has to explain clearly what it believes women's basketball is supposed to represent. Women's sports exist as a separate competitive category for a reason. And the argument from people defending sex-based divisions is that biological differences developed through puberty can affect height, strength, speed, reach, and other physical traits that matter in elite competition. That position should be addressed directly instead of being dismissed as automatically outrageous. If the league refuses to define where the competitive boundaries are, then eventually the argument stops being about one player or one controversy and becomes a much bigger question about what the women's category itself is supposed to mean.
I think it is incredible that she is the only current professional athlete on the women's side, certainly here in North America, of the major sports, that has chosen to state the obvious, that women's sports are for women.
Sage Steele has already pointed toward what she sees as a double standard surrounding this broader controversy, and the same criticism comes right back into focus here. A league cannot spend one moment presenting itself as the defender of women's sports and then refuse to answer difficult questions about how eligibility standards affect the most valuable roster spots in that same sport. At some stage, slogans stop being enough. The league needs a consistent rule that players, teams, fans, and critics can actually understand before the next controversy arrives.
Think about this for a minute, y'all. The girl have XXXY on the shirt. There's nothing there. Rational people go, I don't really like that shirt. Okay, finish watching the game. The co-owner of the team had to come down and cuss out kids. Listen to Sophie and them, team coach. She ain't gonna never let me come to the game, and I don't care. You're a terrible representation for women. Sophie is all y'all got. Roll the clip.
What's your stance? What is your stance on men or athletes who test as biological male participating in women's sports? What's your personal
Great
stance?
question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would say that I'm educated enough from a scientific standpoint.
And remember how long it took before the league even produced visible accountability in the Storm controversy. A co-owner was accused of directing profanity toward two teenage girls, one of whom was reportedly left crying, and days of public pressure followed before punishment was publicly confirmed. So if the league can move that slowly when the issue involves young fans sitting in the arena, why should anyone expect immediate clarity when the subject becomes an eligibility decision capable of changing the competitive balance of the league? The pattern critics see is reaction instead of preparation. The internet explodes first, everyone chooses a side second, and only then does the league scramble to explain itself. A serious organization would have the policy written before the controversy begins, not after everybody is already fighting about it. And she is
absolutely dominating. Like physically destroying teams. Like getting the ball off rebounds and just running coast to coast and running in layups. And averaging 20 and 20. And there is a lot of pushback to her being in the league. There is an awful lot of pushback to the French seconds here for allowing
and none of this requires pretending Tétart cannot play basketball. The production speaks for itself. She reportedly led League 2 in scoring and rebounding, collected Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Domestic Player of the Year honors, earned 15 Player of the Week awards, and even set a league mark with a 30-rebound performance in March. Those are absurd numbers by any standard, but that is exactly why the competitive argument becomes impossible to ignore. Critics of transgender inclusion in women's basketball will look at a 6'3" player with physical advantages they associate with male puberty, competing against female athletes, and say the statistical dominance is evidence of a structural mismatch rather than simply exceptional performance. Whether people agree with that conclusion or not, the league cannot make the question disappear by refusing to discuss it.
You might want to do it before the Portland Fire do. I mean, hell, you might want to sign Julie Tétart before Cheryl Reeve and the Minnesota Lynx sign Julie Tétart. I'm just saying, don't get mad and don't try to take the credit away from Caitlin Clark when they win with Julie at the power forward center spot. Caitlin Clark absolutely crushed ESPN ratings over the weekend once again. And there's a transgender, Julie Tétart, who's looking to get into the WNBA. I say the Indiana Fever, go ahead and make the move since everybody's all good with it, right?
Now imagine the sales pitch everybody online is joking about. Bring Tétart into Indiana, place her beside Caitlin Clark, let her crush screens possession after possession, and suddenly the Fever become nearly impossible to deal with. It sounds incredible if your only goal is creating the most dominant roster possible, but follow the idea one step further. If a team's entire offensive identity starts revolving around an overwhelming physical advantage instead of the basketball that made Clark special in the first place, what exactly has been improved? Clark has spent years developing because defenders force her to solve problems with shooting range, footwork, passing angles, timing, and reads that very few guards can make. She became compelling because she has to create answers under pressure. If every possession turns into simply placing an enormous screen between Clark and the defense, that does not necessarily make her a better player. The most dangerous version of Caitlin Clark is the one constantly forced to evolve, not the version cruising into endless open looks because opponents cannot physically deal with the action in front of her.
Tétart dominated the second-tier French Women's Basketball League 2 by dropping 21 points per game while grabbing 20 rebounds. The biological male, who came out as trans in October 2021, led the league in both categories. It was a season any unlike the league has ever seen. With those numbers, the WNBA should be knocking down Tétart's door, right? Quote, "If they contact me, I won't say no. But you have to be realistic. I'm old, and there are far better players than me." The overly humble 34-year-old Tétart told Outkick in French over Instagram direct messages on Monday. Far better? Are you sure? Tétart's season was so dominant that French media was stunned when the shredded center didn't win league MVP honors. The season was still good enough to win Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and domestic.
Push that scenario 5 years into the future, and the excitement could disappear faster than people think. Tétart comes up, sets the screen, the defender gets wiped out of the action, Clark walks into another open three, and Indiana starts flattening teams night after night. That might be entertaining for a few games. Eventually, though, predictable dominance becomes boring. Sports work because fans believe the result is still uncertain. The WNBA's biggest moments did not become memorable because everyone knew what was going to happen. They came from rivalries, stars answering each other possession after possession, Aja Wilson battling Breanna Stewart with championships hanging in the balance, and games decided in the final minute because two talented rosters had to actually outplay one another. Remove that tension and the product changes. Instead of competition, you get a coronation. And watching the same coronation every season gets old very quickly.
Social media users are calling on the WNBA to sign French basketball player Julie Tétart, who is openly transgender. Her stats are through the roof, and when asked if she was willing to play, if there was an opportunity, she said, "If they contact me, I won't say no, but you have to be realistic. I'm old and there are far better players than me." I mean, she's 34, which isn't that old in the WNBA. There's literally a 35-year-old rookie in the league right now, but she averages 20 points and 20 rebounds per game in France. It seems like Julie could be actual competition for someone like Aja Wilson, whose Las Vegas Aces have a 17% chance of winning the WNBA championship this year, according to Kelce Traders. Others are arguing that it is a competitive advantage, and ultimately this wouldn't be fair to the...
And this is where the situation gets even more complicated. Because when Tétart was directly asked about Sophie Cunningham's position, supporting separate biological categories in women's sports, her response was reportedly a single word in French. That means any WNBA signing would immediately reopen the same argument that surrounded the Storm controversy and Cheryl Reeve's public response to Cunningham. Suddenly, this would not be an abstract social media argument anymore. It would become a roster decision involving wins, losses, contracts, playing time, and championship odds. At that point, vague statements would no longer satisfy anybody. The league would either have to explain exactly what its competitive standard is, or watch the same dispute return over and over again, only with a different team logo attached to it every time.
When you're trying to compete against women, against girls, in women's sports, trying to act like there's no advantage when there's no way in hell that there's no advantage. This is not about being anti-anything. This is about being pro-girls, pro-females, pro-women, pro-ladies. That's what this is about.
It should be noted that you have coaches and players, female in the WNBA, a women's sport, that have sold out women in this. Right up the river. Nah, we're good. Bring whatever swinging dick in here. Put a wig on him. Let him play. There's one in France right now.
Now try imagining what those conversations would sound like inside an actual WNBA locker room. Veterans have spent years working through college basketball, overseas seasons, training camps, roster cuts, injuries, and short contracts just to secure their place in the league. Then a new player arrives and immediately becomes the biggest story in basketball because the entire conversation centers on physical advantage and eligibility. How would longtime players feel about that? Nobody should pretend to know what every athlete thinks, especially on a subject this politically charged. But it is not difficult to understand why some players might privately question whether the competition remains fair. When the storyline surrounding a roster stops being about who has the best skills and starts becoming about who possesses the biggest physical advantage, tension is almost guaranteed.
I've chosen to educate myself about the space. I've chosen to listen to transgender families, and what I know is exclusion is not the answer. We've got to find the common ground and be inclusive. That's the space, I think, if we all come from that. I also think like I said, the issue isn't as big as the issues that we have in women's sports. Whether it's, cisgender men that have held us down for years in spaces like being able to have access to facilities and uniforms and locker rooms, all the things that these young girls that are sitting at games with anti-trans signs, do they understand actually what their real problems are? And how they're being marginalized. We're still not in a space where we have equality. We don't even have the Equal Rights Amendment in all 50 states, right? So there's real issues.
Reeve told reporters that the message on her shirt concerned inclusion and making kids feel safe, and nobody reasonable is arguing that children should feel unsafe at sporting events. But there is another side to the argument that deserves more than a slogan. If the WNBA constantly talks about inspiring young girls, expanding the sport, and showing the next generation what women can accomplish at the highest level, then critics will naturally ask whether allowing physical advantages connected to male puberty supports that mission or undermines it. Young girls watch women's basketball because they can imagine themselves developing the same skills: shooting, defending, passing, rebounding, competing, and earning their place through work. That pathway is part of what gives women's sports their meaning. The league should be able to explain how its eligibility rules protect that pathway while also treating every person involved with basic dignity and respect.
Sophie Cunningham has said that males, biological males, do not belong in women's sport. That's it. That is the rational, sane, commonly shared stance. It's a safety issue. It's a fairness issue. It's not an anti-trans kids campaign, but this coach saying, oh, trans kids are this is what they do. The straw man argument. She is trying to say that Sophie is against trans kids and she's excluding them and this is evil. No! It's so dumb. It's so evil. It's so calculated. And this is how they silence people.
Sophie Cunningham stated her view months ago in simple terms. Women should compete in women's sports, and men should compete in men's sports. She did not need to personally insult anyone for the statement to create controversy, because the policy question itself is already deeply divisive. And the more attention Tétart receives, the more that Cunningham clip is going to resurface. If a 6'3" post player enters the league and immediately begins producing numbers that opponents struggle to match, supporters of Cunningham's argument will point to that performance as evidence that she raised a legitimate competitive concern. That is why turning every eligibility disagreement into a judgment about someone's character solves nothing. A serious professional league should answer difficult competitive questions with written standards, transparent reasoning, and consistent enforcement, not leave coaches, players, and fans to fight the entire issue through shirts, interviews, and social media posts.
Send the shirt, get it all, get everything ready, get the pen and pad ready, go on and get the contract. We're talking player of the year, defensive player of the year, domestic player of the year. Go ahead, record-breaking campaign. Go ahead and look at this. Let's take a look at the highlights, why don't we? Let's take a look at these highlights.
À 3 points qui décoche.
Rebound, pushing it up the floor. Looking like Giannis. Euro style. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, sign me up, baby. Sign me up. Oh yeah. We ain't gonna have to worry about homie missing layups. We ain't gonna have to worry about homie missing layup. Monique Billings, go ahead and take 3 seats. Take 3 seats, Monique Billings. We got a new starting power forward. Aaliyah Boston, you go to power forward. We got a brand.
Fans online are already wondering why no WNBA team has made a move, with some genuinely excited about the possibility and others clearly watching to see whether the league will apply its stated principles consistently. But underneath all the political noise is something much simpler. Most people watching basketball are there for basketball. They did not start following Indiana because they wanted a televised debate over eligibility policy. They started watching because Caitlin Clark can pull up from the logo, because Aja Wilson can take over a fourth quarter, because the overall skill level across the league has become incredible, and because stars create matchups people actually care about. Nobody buys an expensive ticket because they are excited about a corporate statement. They buy the ticket because the game matters. Competitive basketball is the product, and every time the league allows another political controversy to become bigger than the basketball itself, it risks forgetting the exact thing responsible for attracting so many new fans in the first place.
I don't know where we lost the plot when it comes to Title IX and the fact that people are actually trying to defend biological men playing in the same sports field as biological women. I don't know where we lost the plot to that. Biological women and biological men need to be playing in different sports arenas. Or you could take trans men and trans women and put them together in their own Special Olympics. That's fine. But the fact that this needs to be defended, the fact that this is controversial, the fact that this could come out with some type of phobia attached to it is insanity. Sylvie Cunningham does not ever mince her words. She says what she says and she means what she says. And I appreciate her once again coming in.
And that contradiction is really what makes this entire story so revealing. The league can spend days consumed by a shirt, a confrontation, and comments from a player who expressed an opinion about eligibility, while the deeper question about how biological sex and gender identity should interact within a women's professional league remains unresolved in public. That question cannot be avoided forever. Either the women's category has defined competitive boundaries or it does not, and the WNBA has to explain those boundaries clearly enough that teams and players know the rules before a controversial signing occurs. None of this means Tétart lacks talent or deserves personal attacks. The issue is about policy and competition. The WNBA needs stronger coverage, better facilities, larger salaries, more investment, and more young girls picking up basketball because they watched women accomplish extraordinary things at the highest level. Critics are going to argue that introducing a player whose physical development they believe creates an unfair advantage does not solve any of those problems. It simply creates another enormous debate and hands everyone on sports television months of material.
That's the one part of all this that nobody's brought up, is the fact that you still have a league that 110%, we still do not have confirmation if it's ever turned a profit. We suspected they might last year, maybe. There were some indications, but nobody really knows. But for 29 years, the league never turned a profit. Maybe for 30 years. You're getting an audience and you're stretching into audiences that have not watched before. And some of them have not watched because they've heard.
Well, hell, maybe instead of chasing another viral confrontation, another statement, or another signing guaranteed to dominate social media, the WNBA could try the simplest strategy imaginable. Make the basketball the main event. Let Clark launch threes from absurd distances. Let Wilson punish defenses in the paint. Let Stewart, Reese, Mitchell, Boston, and everyone else decide games through actual competition, instead of allowing an unresolved eligibility controversy to swallow the season before it begins. Because the league's recent growth did not happen because fans suddenly became fascinated by policy statements. It happened because the games became compelling, and the stars became impossible to ignore. Whatever rules the WNBA ultimately chooses, those rules need to be clear, consistent, and established before the cameras arrive. Until that happens, every controversial signing, every shirt, and every press conference will keep reopening the exact same argument, only dressed in a different jersey.